All right, welcome everyone. My name is Ruth Ann Webster. I'm the president of the New Ulm League of Women Voters. Welcome to the fourth in our series of energy focused on energy efficiency and energy conservation. And this particular event is extra special because as a part of our study of saving energy and energy conservation, we asked students to participate in both a writing contest and an art contest. And today we're going to announce the winners of those contests. We'll start with the writing contest. Now the winner was not able to be here. The winner is Grace Berry. But she wrote a wonderful poem with this prompt. I'll give you the prompt. It said, it's easy to blame energy consumption on other nations or even other parts of the country, but we can make progress toward a sustainable world. Everyone needs to reform their own lives and neighborhood in terms of energy use. Imagine a future you want to live in, how you can influence others to achieve that goal. And Grace wrote a poem, and Deb is going to read that for us.
The title of Grace's poem is Imagine. Imagine a future where everyone can have fresh water, where the trees sway in the summer breeze, where you can breathe as much air as you want, yet still have enough left over for the next. Imagine a future where Hollywood isn't floating below the ocean, where polar bears roam the earth. Yet you can't just imagine, you have to do. Go the extra mile, speak out. One person can't change the world, yet they can still try. Reduce, reuse, recycle. But don't just recycle plastic to a landfill in India. Don't just want. Yet wanting is so easy. Blaming others. Drinking out of a plastic straw, yet talking about melting glaciers and climate change. You are no better than the next. Buying the electric car helps, but you can't just stop there. Walk to work. Don't waste. Just because you have enough doesn't mean the next generation will. Do you want a world where children don't have enough clean water to survive? Where it's too hot to go outside? Then do something. Do your own part. Don't waste electricity. Don't pollute our waterways. Imagine a world where everyone works together to save the earth.
That's just lovely, Grace. I'm sorry she couldn't be here, but her check's in the mail. Now, for the art contest, we had a similar request. We asked our artists to think about and create an artistic depiction of the sustainable community you want to live in and how you can influence others to achieve that goal. We had a former art teacher, Mr. Ingebretson, judge our submissions, and we have three winners. And as I call out third place, second place, first place, please walk up and stand behind your lovely artistic project. Third place is Dylan Swingford. Thank you so much. And second place is Jack Stoner. And the first place winner is Braden Malcolm. Braden, good job. Okay. Oh, good. That's good. Here. Stand up here. Oh, I've got to give you your check. Just a second. Oh, we got to get a picture. Good. Wonderful. Bravo. Oh, bravo. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and thank your parents and your teachers and everybody that encouraged you. All right, thank you so much. Do we have our speakers like that? Are they here? We do. Next, coming right up. Coming right up. This evening's presentation is called, oh, you guys can sit down. Thank you. Well, you don't have to stand there all night. You don't have to stand there all night. Thank you so much. This evening's presentation is about the energy efficient home. And our speakers tonight are Chad Lewis and Dan Gog from GSM New Ulm. We really appreciate you coming and talking to us.
Welcome. I'm going to introduce everyone, and then I'm going to stand out of everyone's way.
And you'll have to see where I was talking. That's your zone.
This is
We're
our
in the
zone.
zone.
All right.
All right. Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Chris Lewis. I work for Our Steel and Heating Supply Company. I'm what's called a territory manager. I'm just here to introduce our speakers here. Not really Dan, but Mike Daniels is our Vice President of Sales and Marketing, Senior Assistant to the ownership, and he's well versed in the topics that we have at hand. So we brought an expert for you guys here today. So yeah.
And I'm Dan Gog. I work for Gog Sheet Metal in New Ulm. We're the local Bryant dealer, and we get all our supplies from Our Steel. So
yeah.
very good. All right.
Well, we primarily wanted to talk about probably the hottest topic that's going around, which is air source heat pumps, and maybe clear the air on a few things and answer any questions that you may have. But part of the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, there are some considerable dollars and tax credits available to people who install air source heat pumps. And very, very efficient. We hear terms, which is true, they're up to 300% efficient, and we hear about gas furnaces that are, say, 90% or 95% efficient. So the most efficient gas furnace on the market right now is 98% efficient. So for every dollar you're spending in natural gas or propane, you're getting 98 cents of heat into your home, okay? So when we look at a heat pump, it's like, well, how can something be 300% efficient? Okay, there's not a 300% efficient gas furnace, right? Well, it's all kind of the baseline, if you will. So a heat pump is, another term for it is a reverse cycle air conditioner, okay? So a heat pump is electric heat. But your traditional electric heat, you buy electricity, and for every kilowatt that you buy, so the utility company bills you, let's say 13 cents a kilowatt. Well, for 13 cents a kilowatt, how much heat am I getting? You get about 3,400 BTUs, okay? Well, a heat pump heat pumps and air conditioners, they don't create heat or create cooling, if you will. All they do is transfer heat. So if we take like your refrigerator, it's a refrigeration system. It's cool inside the box, but on the back side of your refrigerator, it's warm, okay? So this refrigeration system is just transferring heat from inside the box to outside. The heat you feel on the back of the refrigerator, those are the exact BTUs that it took out of your milk and your eggs and your cheese, okay? So refrigeration systems don't create coldness. They're not pushing coldness into your chest freezer or your refrigerator. They're actually removing the heat, and they're dumping it outside or on the back of that. Just like a central air conditioner, it's not creating coolness, pushing cold air into your duct system. It's removing heat. So if you go to your air conditioner outside and you feel the heat, the central air is running, and there's heat pouring out of that if you feel the hot air coming out of it. Those are the exact BTUs that it took out of your home and it dumped it outside. So a heat pump just runs it in the reverse, and now it takes heat from the outside air and it dumps it into your home. And it's 3 times more efficient in transferring that heat than it is creating heat. So if we go to the baseline, that electric resistance heat, if I paid the utility company 13 cents for 1 kilowatt, I'm going to get 3,400 BTUs. But the 13 cents you use to run that heat pump, you're going to get over 10,000 BTUs. So it's much more, that's where the 300% efficient comes in, and is, I'm buying electricity, how much heat am I going to get for every kilowatt that I spend? And there's federal tax credits that are available. They actually go until 2032 if you install an air source heat pump. And they're the hottest product in our whole market right now. Last year, for the first time ever, Bryant, one of the major leading manufacturers in the country, produced more heat pumps than they did gas furnaces. So that's a first time ever. And there used to be, quite a, on average, probably $2,000 to above. I'm going to put in a central air conditioner. Let's say for my house, I can put an air conditioner. An air source heat pump installs, looks, acts, tastes, smells just like a central air conditioner, but it's got one key component called a reversing valve that just reverses the flow of the refrigerant on where it's moving the heat around. And generally, those would cost a couple $1,000s more than an air conditioner. Well, now the federal tax credit through the IRA is $2,000 if it qualifies. So the government is really, providing tax credits to just pay for the difference. So we now don't have to look at an ROI, well, if I spend the extra money, where's my operating costs, going to be and coming down. So that $2,000 doesn't count the local utility rebates, and that's where Gog Sheet Metal knows what all of your local utility rebates are. But many of them are mirroring pretty close. We're seeing some of the rebates up here, and maybe Dan or Steve might know what some of the top rebates in the New Ulm area are for an air source heat pump.
I think our REA is 2,500 or 3,000?
Yeah, it's 2,500. McLeod County Co-op, which is up a little further north, is $2,000 or $2,200 right now.
Okay.
It's only been installed by September.
Okay. So for those listening to the program, 2,000, 2,500, and that's what we're seeing around the whole state of Minnesota and different co-ops and utilities. So now, between the tax credits and the utility rebates, the difference between an air conditioner and a heat pump can be $4,000. And now, it makes more sense to simply make that central air conditioner a heat pump. And there's a lot of other advantages to that, but that God can explain, whether it's dehumidification, some of the technology that's out there. They're called inverter. They're modulating compressors, and traditionally in the past, most furnaces and most air conditioners have had one speed. They're either on or they're off, and most of these cold climate heat pumps, that's a new term just in the last couple years, cold climate heat pumps made for our Minnesota markets, they are a modulating system. So they have very long, nice, smooth, quiet run times. And it's another, other than just the efficiency rating, it's also about how long are these running. You get freeway mileage rather than city mileage out of them. So you might experience that, boy, my new system is running a lot more than my old system did. And the good news is, yes, it's supposed to. Rather than just running at full speed and cycling, starting and stopping, many of these almost don't shut off. The perfect heating and cooling system, if it was ever designed, would never shut off. It would always either be adding BTUs to your home or removing BTUs, which is heating and cooling. and just running, you know, freeway mileage all the
Is
time.
it just one system, heating and just one system? You know, usually we got a furnace and you got an air conditioner.
Yeah.
Is this just one system?
Well, so is there just one system? Yes, there's both. So there's your traditional system that you would have one furnace and then one heat pump, which also cools, just like a central air conditioner. But there are also what are called mini splits, and these are small. You might have one outdoor unit and one high wall, or some of them are in the ceiling, or they're console units. And they're also heat pumps. They heat and cool and transfer the BTUs in and out of your home very, very efficiently. So those are called mini splits, and those are pretty much what the rest of the globe uses, to be honest, for heating and cooling. So other parts of the globe, like I mentioned, we're 13 cents a kilowatt. You go to Europe, they pay 30 to 40 cents a kilowatt. You go to Japan and some of the Asian countries, 50 and 60 cents a kilowatt. So they had to figure out a better mousetrap a long time ago, something way more efficient than just electric heat. So it's been a little bit of a newer product. You know, we're kind of spoiled with our low energy costs, to be honest, in the U.S. Other parts of the globe look at how we traditionally heat and cool our homes. We have one thermostat in the middle of the house, and we control the heating and cooling system from one location in the whole house. And to the rest of the country, it's like putting one light switch next to your thermostat, and when you're home, you turn on every light in the house, and when you're not, you turn every light off. Well, we have a switch in every room, obviously, for our lights. And other parts of the country, they have different heating and cooling units in these mini splits, in these heat pumps. And they're very, very efficient, not only from an operating standpoint, but they're only heating and cooling the rooms that you're using. And they have become very popular in the U.S. over the past 10 years, I would say. Where they first started was in homes that have hot water heat, okay? And there's no ductwork in the home. And so if you have one of those systems, how do I get air conditioning? I have no ductwork. That's where these mini splits go in, and each room can have its own individual temperature control, and we can, you know, heat and cool and zone it. But then the popularity of these units have really grown even into the homes that have ductwork. The most popular room that these systems go into across the whole country, number one room is the master bedroom that these mini splits are sold, because we may want our room a little cooler at night or a little bit warmer. And right now your choice might be, well, I got to turn the one thermostat and cool the whole house down at night. You know, that's the question. Would you like individual temperature control in your bedroom? Yes, that's where a mini split is popular. Probably the second most popular room is a lower level family room. So, you know, over the past 20, 30 years, the split level home is very popular in Minnesota. You got two levels, you know, you walk in the front door and you go half a level up and half down. Gorgeous family room in the lower level. There's a nice fireplace. We're going to buy this house, and the kids can play downstairs. And you go survey those people a few years after they've been in that home. How do you like that lower level family room? Yeah, we had pretty good. We thought we really don't use it very much. Why not? Well, they're not very comfortable down there. It's cool and clammy, and there's no individual temperature control. So that's another very popular area for these mini splits. Now those also get if they meet the efficiency levels, get the same rebates. They also can get a $2,000 federal tax credit, a $2,000 or $2,500 utility rebate. And so there's some great incentives on these heat pumps. Those are the two. You're talking about what's called unitary, which is a single unit, as you mentioned, for a whole home, or the mini splits that have separate indoor and outdoor units. So, yeah, that's kind of the hot products in the marketplace right now.
Could these work on large public buildings like a school or a city hall or something like that?
Yes, so the question is, you know, commercial applications, larger buildings, city halls, schools, they can and they are being used. The term used in those larger commercial buildings is VRF, variable refrigerant flow. And the industry is kind of transforming away from the management of moving airflow to managing refrigerant flow. It's much more efficient and it's much more effective. So in the commercial part of the business, yes, those are growing in popularity, multi-family projects. We're seeing a lot of these mini splits and VRF, variable refrigerant flows, in apartment buildings, schools, yep. And you know, the drive for efficiency in the U.S. and you know, there's incentives for electrification and going more electric, you know, reduction in fossil fuels. But they work very well together. They're called dual fuel systems. Right now is a pretty good time, I would say, to make a change if you are in the next few years, because our industry has a major change next year of a new refrigerant that's being mandated that has a low global warming potential rating, okay? And it is going to add cost significantly, I will use the term, into the cost of future air conditioners and heat pumps. The new refrigerant is, so I'll use the term, but not to be alarmed, but it is slightly flammable. So the industry and the regulations have, with these new systems, there has to be some detectors, sensors if there's a refrigerant leak. And if there is, then there's a mitigation system that ventilates the system or dissipates the system. So it's not so much that the new refrigerant is at a higher cost, it's that the other components that will have to go to this system. So pretty much installs the same. So this year, the manufacturers have to stop producing the products with today's refrigerant at the end of the year. And then our industry has 1 year to sell and install any products that are produced for new systems next year. So only for 1 year. But the manufacturers in about, and all the major manufacturers, you know, us, Bryant and Lennox and Carrier and Trane, everybody has to do the same thing. And the new refrigerant has to start coming in products on January 1 of next year. So we're not that far away, and it is going to add to the price of future heating and cooling because of the regulations that are being applied to that product. So,
And the name of those products, what's the name of that refrigerant?
Name of that refrigerant, we call it Piron Advance, but there are two refrigerants. Their technical terms, there's R454B and then R32. That's adding a little bit of a challenge to heating contractors because in the past, all of the manufacturers have chosen to go with one refrigerant. So it used to be R22, and that got phased out back in the early 2000s. And then everybody in the industry used R410A. We call it Piron. That's what we use today. We've been using that for 20 years, and it's the same refrigerant everybody has. With this new change, some of the manufacturers, I'll say the majority of the manufacturers are going with R454B, but some others have elected to go with R32. They're both what's called A2L refrigerant, which the L means low flammability. So they both have the same classification, so they both have to follow the same guidelines and regulations. But there's some new things on installing it, being it is slightly flammable, and there's some new controls. So that'll take effect next year. And when they'll still continue to manufacture today's refrigerant components, but they can't be installed as a complete system at the end of next year. So, but any other yes? Question in the front? No? Okay.
GWP, Mike, do you want to touch on GWP and why the changes have come?
Yeah, the first change that we had was to reduce ozone depletion. And we heard before, there's over the poles, we have a hole in the ozone, and so that was the first regulation, and that has switched to global warming potential, which basically we're getting, I'll use some layman's terms, getting a film around our globe in the stratosphere that the heat is getting trapped. And so they rate refrigerants and many, many other chemicals on their effectiveness on the global warming potential. And today, the rating baseline is carbon dioxide, and that's 0, okay? So today's refrigerant, the rating is 2,088. The new minimum is 700, so the mandates are, they don't tell the manufacturers what refrigerant they have to use. They just say it has to have a global warming potential rating below 700. So the Puron Advance has a rating of 466. That R32, the other one, is just under the 700. It's like 675. So, yeah.
This is a different question.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a question for Mr. Gog, but are these systems so different that it requires a different level of training for the local installer?
Yeah, so the question is there going to be a whole different level of training required for the local contractors to work with the new refrigerant? Yes, it requires additional training by the contractor. No, there's not that much difference to the installation, okay? So the systems aren't going to look different. They're not really going to install different. There is a couple of extra controls that need to be wired in and connected. There are some servicing and charging procedures that are considered best practices today. So many contractors, those that do a lot of training, I can personally speak for GOG, they're always involved in the trainings that we have on this. And some of those best practices will now be requirements, okay? So contractors that have been doing the best practices anyways, and I would say GOG has, there's not going to be much difference for them. But other contractors that haven't been required to do some of the things when they're charging or servicing the units, they will now be required to follow some of those procedures, okay? So, but my bottom line is there's not a lot of change that you would see or know about. But there is some little additional labor for time and controls and wiring that the contractors will do. Yes?
So just to follow up on that, one of the things I wondered about is like unit sizing where you put in a 3-ton AC and it's
Yep.
about 36,000 BTUs, and you got your gas furnace that's going to be 60, 80, 100,000 BTUs.
Yep.
So, if you were to size up with conventional systems, you would way oversize your AC to meet that heating load, and then you short cycle. But these are generally running with, like you said, more modular.
Yeah.
Inverter-based or scrolling compressors or whatever.
Yep.
So then that mitigates that concern about short cycling and poor
Sure.
quality control.
Yeah, the question has to do with some of the new technology, and does that affect sizing, you know, of products, and specifically heat pumps we'll talk about. So it allows for what we would call some, inverter technology will allow some slight oversizing. The concern with oversizing is we're generally doing that. I want to get more heat out of this unit so that I can run it longer into the colder weather. And our caution is we can't forget that summer comes around once a year also. And I would say that was one of the sins of the past with air source heat pumps, is the focus was on heating, and if you needed a 2-ton air conditioner, well, if you're gonna do a heat pump, let's put a 3-ton in. And we were able to run that heat pump a little bit longer before we kicked in the gas furnace. So when we add a heat pump on a gas furnace, it's either or. It's kind of like a hybrid car. It's either in electric mode or it's in gas mode. And that's what Bryant calls their dual fuel system, their hybrid heat system. So you're either gonna run the electric heat, which is the heat pump, very efficient, down to a certain temperature. And generally, when we just size the heat pump for the cooling load, it would use the heat pump down to about freezing, 30 degrees. And then below freezing, it will kick on the gas furnace. Now, some of it would be, hey, we live in Minnesota. If you're only gonna run the heat pump above freezing, it isn't gonna run very much. Well, we will show you there's a 30-year average from the US Weather Bureau. About 60% of the heating season, not even counting summer, it's above freezing. This past winter was a wonderful heat pump winter. It was. And people got a lot of enjoyment and worth out of their air source heat pumps. Now the new inverter technology, we're seeing that we can now, since these units can ramp up at a higher speed, we're down to, a typical is 20 degrees, and some of the units will allow us to run them down to 10 degrees before we kick on the gas furnace. So we can oversize these. Generally, a half to 1 full ton, but there's kind of 2 rules when oversizing. You never oversize a single stage heat pump is our training, because you size it for the cooling load, it'll work great. Some of our markets, and I've worked with Bryant for over 30 years, and when I first went to work for them, some of our biggest heat pump markets in Minnesota are Thief River Falls, Minnesota, Fergus Falls, very, very cold climate. And because of some of the very attractive utility rebates and incentives up there, people were putting in heat pumps right and left. And they just size it for the cooling load, and they run it down to freezing, and they work perfect. We get into other markets where maybe it was oversized. That's where there was problems with, wait, this isn't cooling very well. This product has 2 roles, heat and cool. Again, to your point with inverter technology, we are seeing that we can, again, I use the word slightly oversize, a half to 1 ton, because these can ramp up when it's colder, but they can also ramp down to lower speeds in the summer. So I could possibly put in a 3-ton heat pump on a 2-ton load, because that unit can ramp down to maybe a 1.5 ton and even run smaller. So there's quite a range to operate. It'll operate more on the upper portions for the heating season and operate more on the lower portions in the summer. So not only do you enjoy the nice heating efficiency benefits, but most of these units are, 18, 20, 22 SEER, and that's an efficiency rating on an air conditioner called a SEER, S-E-E-R, stands for Seasonal Energy Efficiency Ratio. So you really get some benefits of cooling, but So hopefully that answered your questions. We do see some oversizing, yeah. Anybody else? Yes?
Say they're they're switching from one coolant to another, starting this coming, 2025.
Yep.
Can they put the new coolant in the old unit with some minor modifications?
Excellent question.
You run out
Yep.
of the old coolant.
Yeah, so the question was, when the new refrigerant comes out, can it be retrofitted in prior systems? And the answer is no, it cannot. The operating pressures and temperatures are slightly different. They're different enough that the compressor isn't matched and what's called the metering device. So the answer is no, that unfortunately the new refrigerants will not be able to be used in the old, in today's current products. Yep, they are different. Follow-up question? No?
You'll still be able to get the old refrigerant to service existing equipment.
Well, you still will be able to get the old, but it is also being mandated federally to be phased out. So it's the whole supply and demand. So they are phasing out the current refrigerant, and we're almost halfway through that. So here in 2024, that available refrigerant available that the chemical companies can make and that the manufacturers can use, they all are under restrictions on how much of today's refrigerant they can get. And they set a cap for every manufacturer. If their cap was X, starting in 2022, it was only 90% of that. So the phase out started in 2022. Now, just a few months ago, starting January 1st of 2024, it dropped an additional 30%. So currently, everybody is under a cap of 40% of what was set way back in 2020. So already this year, we're starting to see an increase in the pricing of the current refrigerant because the supplies are going down, and the new refrigerant is coming soon.
What
Yep.
what would be the expected life of this type of heat pump?
So the question is, what's the expected life of this type of heat pump? No change. Typically, the life expectancy of residential heating and cooling equipment is 15 to 20 years, okay? The National Home Builders Association ran a report, or produced a report that showed what are the factors that affect the life expectancy of HVAC equipment. And the two main ones, 54% of what's going to affect the life expectancy is installation, startup, and setup. Okay? So how that product is properly installed, set up, and started up is 54% of determining how long that is going to last. Then the baton gets handed over to the homeowner, because 40% of annual routine maintenance is going to affect how long that equipment's going to last. And to be honest, only 6% was the product. Okay, so you know, we often say too, what's the number one thing consumers don't understand about HVAC equipment? The number one thing is it is all about the installation, startup, and setup. So choosing a contractor first is number one. And a professional installed, it's critical. HVAC equipment is in the category of household appliances. Okay, you have a dishwasher, you have a washer dryer, you have a refrigerator, and then you have a furnace and a central air conditioner. So take the household refrigerators, they come off the line. We call it a rodeo install because it takes 8 seconds, okay? It's got wheels. You roll it into the 36-inch opening, plug it in, installed, okay? And the yellow sticker on there that tells you what your expected annual operating cost of that refrigerator is going to be pretty accurate and consistent across, let's say, all of Minnesota or across the whole country, because they're all in homes and the condition's the same. And the same with really a dishwasher and a washer and dryer. The proper operation of those is not critically dependent on the installation. And nothing could be farther from the truth for heating and air conditioning. It's all about the proper installation because everybody's ductwork is different and size different and configured different. The gas pressures have to be set. The proper airflows have to be set based on your particular home and the sizing of the equipment. So these are all the things that the contractor has to ensure that this thing is operating within the parameters of the product. And we call it brochure efficiency. And the rated efficiency is different. I'll cite the Minnesota Center of Energy and Environment did some studies, case studies in 2017. And, I'll paraphrase, but using their words, that consumers should not expect the rated performance of their equipment to be what the actual efficiency is in their home. And it has a lot to do with how much the equipment is cycling, how it's sized, and how it was installed and set up. And they, on their case studies, the results were on gas furnaces, the actual efficiency was 8 to 15 points lower than what the rated or brochure efficiency was. And
when you're buying a 95% efficient furnace, it's probably 85.
Probably 85, and it has to do a lot with sizing and setup, cycling. I'll give you a quick example just on the math. If you ran your dishwasher every single day and never missed a day in a whole year, how many cycles would your dishwasher run in 1 year? 365. And there's all these components in that dishwasher that have to come on and off. So when you start the cycle, the water solenoid opens and water starts coming into the dishwasher. There's a float that shuts that off. Then there's a pump that sprays it around, and then it shuts off and drains, pumps it out, drains, and then it refills and rinses. All those components have to come on and off for one cycle, 365 times a year. Now, if you take a furnace, and I'll say a properly installed, and sized and installed furnace and set up properly, the ideal cycle rate for our industry is 3 cycles an hour.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, which is so on for 15 minutes, off for 5, on for 15, off for 5, on for 15, off for 5. There's 1 hour, 3 cycles. And if you just do the math, 3 cycles times 24 hours a day, times 30 days a month, times, let's just say, 5 months. It's 10,800 cycles in 1 year. So 10,800 versus 365. And all these components have to come on and off. The thermostat calls, the inducer comes on, the pressure switch makes sure the venting is clear, and then it brings on the hot surface igniter, and the gas valve opens. It's got to do that 10,000 if you have, if the system is working properly. Now 40% is you got to make sure there's clean filters in there, because if you don't clean the filter, the furnace can't breathe, and now there's a built-in limit. You probably don't even know as a homeowner, the furnace is running hot. So one call on the thermostat, the gas valve comes on, it gets too hot, it shuts off, the blower keeps running, but the furnace is going through double cycles because the filter's dirty, and now it's short cycling. So, we're equally responsible that it's installed and sized right and that you're maintaining it. So, to get the efficiencies that you want. And they go through a lot, and sometimes the homeowner might lose the pump goes bad on the dishwasher, and it's like, you know what? I don't think we've missed a day in 5 years. I'm not surprised that the pump went off on this dishwasher. We use the heck out of it. But if a part goes bad on a furnace, it's only 5 years old, and sometimes the homeowners, geez, we hardly ever use it, you know, and it's like, well, it cycles 10,000 times a year, and there's a lot of wear and tear on that product, especially up here in Minnesota. So then it gets, how do you get to that 3 cycles an hour? Well, if you can match the output of the amount of heating and cooling your system is putting, if it matches the home, like in mild weather, then it just runs and runs and runs, and that's where you're getting the freeway mileage. It's nice and efficient. But if you put a single stage furnace, it's like a on or off. It's a 100-watt light bulb, on or off. In all the manufacturers, once the furnace is sized for your home, you'll have 3 choices. Do you want a single stage furnace? It's big, it's 60,000 to your example, a 60,000 BTU furnace. That's sized for 20 below. That's what we use for design conditions here, 20 below. So it'll heat your house at 20 below. Now, when it's 25 outside, you only need half of that, but the furnace is oversized 95% of the winter. So now it starts short cycling. You just get a blast of heat, enough heat for 20 below, even though it's 20 above, and it's off, and now the furnace is short cycling. The other part of the study that the Minnesota Center of Energy and Environment found in those same case studies, it takes 14 minutes for a furnace to reach its efficiency level that it's running. Well, a single stage furnace, the only time you might get a 14-minute is when it's 20 below. That's when that furnace is at its most efficient, when it's running the most. The worst time for a single stage furnace to run is in mild weather, which, oh, by the way, that's the best time for a heat pump to run. So, you know, we've heard the term, the best thing you could ever do to a gas furnace is pair it with a heat pump. Because the heat pump operates in the springtime, or in the mild spring and fall, and mild weathers, or say when it's above 20 degrees, it's going to run where it's most efficient and its longest run cycles, and then the gas furnace is going to start kicking in once it gets cold enough to finally we can get some longer run cycles. But your 3 choices in those furnaces is a single stage, a 2-stage, which is probably the most popular furnace now. It has a high fire and a low fire. So the majority of the season it runs on low fire. It'll run there generally until it gets down to around 10, 5, 0 before it starts kicking into high fire. And the third option is a modulating furnace. That's like putting a dimmer switch on that light bulb. And they run long run cycles, so they're really efficient. They modulate way down. For all of the manufacturers, we've looked at all the major manufacturers, the 2-stage furnaces, they're great, but low isn't very low. Typically, they only drop down about 1/3 of the full capacity. Every manufacturer we looked at, they drop 1/3. Where the modulating furnaces run much lower. They're generally all down to 40% capacity. So much quieter. That's probably the #1 complaint in the industry with high efficiency furnaces is they're noisy. They blow a lot of air. You know, can you turn that blower down? The answer is no. I mean, sometimes we can, but there's a limit. Because how a high efficiency works is you're blowing a lot of air across that heat exchanger. Basically, for all the manufacturers, the high efficiency furnaces now have 2 heat exchangers, a primary and a secondary, and they blow a lot of air. So kind of blowing on your hand, it's noisy, that's cooler air. But these modulating furnaces that can modulate way down, it's kind of like breathing softly on your hand. It's warm, it's quiet. So the happiest customers have the modulating furnaces. Why? Because they run much longer cycles, they're much quieter, and generally there's a lot warmer air coming out of the register. So all of those would be a 60,000 BTU. We run the load at 60 and 80 or 100, and now you would have three choices. Yes, question?
Add in-floor heating to this whole system. How does that all work together?
Yeah, so how does in-floor heating work with that system? Well, I would say it doesn't work with that system. In-floor heating, which I have, I live in Hayward, Wisconsin, built a retirement home a couple years ago. Been in the industry my whole life, so I'm like, okay, this is what I do. I'm gonna build a house around my heating and cooling system. So I do have radiant in-floor. I have no ductwork in my house. And I heat it with the geothermal system. And so there's water tubes that, you know, we laid down before we poured the concrete, and it's all insulation and that underneath. So we pump warm fluid, you know, through there. I have 9 different zones around the house, and there's 2 ways I can heat that water. I can heat it with a geothermal heat pump, which is the same type of refrigeration system, but rather than pulling the heat from the outside air for heating and dumping the heat to the outside air for cooling, it pulls it out of the ground and dumps it in the ground. And then I'm out in the country, so I have a propane boiler backup. So nice warm floors, very, very comfortable. And then it's like, well, what do you do for cooling? Well, I have these mini splits. It's 1 outdoor unit and 5 indoor units. It's a heat pump, so it's nice in the, you know, once you fire up your in-floor heating system, the concrete floor, it's like a big battery, and so it's harder to control in shorter periods. So you might get in the fall and, ooh, it's cold for a couple days, you heat up that slab. Well, then the sun, it warms up then in the 70s in October for a week, and it's like, man, I got all this heat coming in. So that's where the heat pump's nice, that in the shoulder season, you can heat and cool the air, you know, quicker. And then generally, once we get around Thanksgiving, then I start warming up the floor. And now just, you know, in the past few weeks, I haven't shut my in-floor off yet, but I'm about ready to, so. Yeah. But there's heat pumps that do that also. Now there are some new products just starting to come out in the market, and they're called air to water heat pumps. Basically, they're a heat pump boiler that will take the heat out of the air, and you can and put it into the water. That primarily for in-floor heating. So you wouldn't have to have geothermal. You can have a traditional style air source heat pump, but instead of dumping it into your ductwork and your blower system, you put it into your boiler system. Okay? Question, yes?
Do you have to change your electrical system much to?
Good question. Do you have to change your electrical system? Usually not, but I will say with, if we're in a home and we're taking out an existing air conditioner and putting in one of these inverter system heat pumps, sometimes the circuit breaker is a little bit larger needed in that home. You might have a 20 amp and it might have to go to a 30 amp. So sometimes they're the same, but to your questions, you know, it's one of the things when God comes out, looks at your home, can your, once it's sized, okay, what do we want to put in here? Then will your electrical panel support it? Normally it will, but once in a while, oh, it's a little bit bigger, so that is something that they would look at. The question might be, well, why would the breaker be bigger if this is more efficient? It has to do with the capabilities of these inverter systems. Generally, they're running at these lower stages way more efficient, but if they do have to ramp up to the peak maximum capacity, they might need a little more oomph, if you will, for the wide capabilities that this has, but the efficiencies are much better. Yeah. Great questions. Anything else? Well, I hope that helps. If you're in the
I've got a question
Yeah.
for John here.
All right, I'm coming up.
Chris.
Chris, I apologize.
That's
No,
all
you're
right.
fine.
I apologize. How much education do you have to do when you're selling a system to a homeowner, or do you expect the contractor to do that?
Oh, so yeah, the question was how much education should you do with a homeowner? And so I would say our job at distribution level is to educate the contractors to the best of our abilities so that they can then educate, you know, the homeowners. I mean, Mike and I have been all day today, I've been doing trainings with contractors on the very topics he's like the speech that he's given you guys off the cuff with no notes for an hour. I heard him doing 2 hours ago in Mankato, not to a group of homeowners, but to a contractor. You know, I knew when the dishwasher story was coming, and I was ready for it. And you know, I mean, but it's what we're doing. We try to educate our dealers, our contractors that we work with and have great relationships with, so they can go ahead and do the same for their customers as well. So that's how I kind of come into it. So thank you for that question. Yeah.
Yeah, to add to that, you know, some customers are just, hey, I want a new box outside that cools, and some customers want an hour-long education, because you only do it every 20 years.
Right.
Yeah. What's your stat? You only buy this 2 or 3 times a year?
Typically, consumers only buy our products twice in a lifetime. And that's what we train, you know, contractors to, and their goal, and again, I know this for GOG, I know they've been around since 1904. They're one of the oldest Bryant dealers actually in the country. But they, through a lot of training, where was I going with that?
Well, they're educated. They're spending the time. They take the extra time. They're what we call a factory authorized dealer, which what that means is they do extra training. We would consider them to be in the top 1% of all Bryant dealers in the country. That's kind of what you do. You do the extra training. You go through the extra with your, whether that's sales education, but mostly it's technical, right? And when we're talking about the new refrigerant and the new systems that are coming, you know, you really want to work with somebody who's been through those trainings, because there is some differences that are coming. So.
Where I was going with that is, you know, I know the goal for some contractors, it is for sure for GOG. Their goal is to help you make an educated buying decision. So to your, boy, how much, if you only buy something twice in a lifetime, I mean, most consumers don't even know what question to ask.
No kidding.
The first thing you should ask them is how old they are.
There you go. I'm not gonna reveal that.
How old, you know, I'm selling you this product, and how old I'm already half my life. And how old are you?
Yeah.
I like that idea.
But that's the goal at the kitchen table. And that's how I am personally when I'm going to buy something. I want somebody to educate me, because I don't want buyer's remorse. I'd rather not be, why didn't somebody tell me that? Well, you didn't ask. Well, I didn't even know what to ask. And so that's, you know, what you'll find from GOG and is, here's what you need to know, here's some decisions you'll have, and here's what your options are, and allow you to pick and choose. But hopefully that's, you know, what your contractors is doing, is providing valuable information. So you don't have buyer's remorse. Nobody wants that.
We use the analogy a lot, like the contractor or the outside sales. The salesperson is the waiter or the waitress, right? They're giving you the options in the menu. Here's the specials. Here's, you know, and they're educating you on what's on the menu, and then potentially making a recommendation to you that they feel would be strong for your home, but allowing you as the consumers to make those choices off the menu. And that's a way we kind of describe it. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Typically, in a home, you'd have an air conditioner and you'd have a heater. And now you're talking about a heat pump. How does that fit in?
So the question is typically you have a furnace and an air conditioner, and now you have a heat pump, so how does that fit in? I would tell you, you will not even know the difference. It's nothing additional. It looks, acts, tastes, smells exactly like a furnace and an air conditioner, but in that outdoor air conditioner, it has a couple extra components, but the key component is a reversing valve. And so even for me, I've been doing this my whole life, if I came out to a system and you said, Mike, this outdoor unit, is that an air conditioner or a heat pump? My answer would be, I don't know. I gotta go look inside to see if there, oh yeah, there's a reversing valve in there. That's a heat pump. So they look the same, they install the same. So there's really not much a difference for you or the homeowner. These systems are automatic, whether it's gonna run the heat pump or the gas furnace. The contractor, this is part of the setup, they set up what's called a balance point. And depending on the size of the equipment, your system might turn on and off or switch. There's a call for heat. How the control works is, I need heat. Okay, what's the temperature outside? If the balance point was set at 20, I need heat. What's the temp? It's 30, run the heat pump. That night, 2 o'clock in the morning, I need heat. What's the temperature? It's 15, run the gas furnace. So they set a balance point, but you don't know. There's nothing you have to do as a homeowner. It's all automatic. It looks like you have a gas furnace and a central air conditioner. It looks exactly the same.
So you need all three?
No, you only need, the heat pump heats and cools.
So only need one?
You only need one.
Well, so you need the furnace in both scenarios, but then your heat
just
pump will do all your air conditioning and potentially 50% of your
Yeah.
heating as well. I cheat to answer your question. How do I know if it's an air conditioner or a heat pump? 90% of heat pumps are up on a stand.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason I know. Is it as tall as me? It's a heat pump. Is it shorter than me? It's probably a
I'm
central
glad
air
we're
conditioner.
using yous for
Yeah,
the
well, I
height
thought we
scale.
should. All right.
Which is great. Most heat pumps, they should be. That's if we see them out there and they're not installed on what's called a snow stand. But the heat pumps sit up on a snow stand. They have a defrost cycle. It's all automatic. And they may periodically have to melt the frost that collects on the outdoor unit. So the snow stand could be called an ice stand, and it defrosts and water drips below it. So that perfect would be one way to tell the difference, but it's just one unit. And sometimes we say, whoever named this thing a heat pump should be shot, excuse me, because it adds so much confusion. The better term is, I heard one say, an air conditioner is a defeatured heat pump because it only does one thing, it cools. But I think a good name for a heat pump, it's a reverse cycle air conditioner. It can run in two directions. It can transfer heat into your home to heat it. It can transfer heat out of the home to cool it. And it all installs pretty much the same. Yeah. All right.
I might ask this
Yes.
at the beginning, but if a homeowner was thinking, when would they start to think about switching this over? So I have a furnace, I have an air conditioner, they seem to be working,
Yep. So,
so just wait till one dies, or?
yeah, the question is, when does a homeowner know it's time to change their system? Maybe when it dies. That's not a good choice because generally you're rushed into making a decision quickly and you don't get the options and the education and hey, it's January and my furnace went out, I need a new furnace. So planned replacement, I would say there's two things. One is the age of your existing equipment, and if it's 15 years older, you should start planning and looking ahead and planning on replacing it. Most of the products out there today have a 10-year warranty on them, 10-year parts warranty, okay? So I think, the when you're looking at, let's say 50, everything's working fine, after 15 years, there's lots of new, the current product you have is out of warranty. Don't wait till it breaks. The new products have, there's lots of new technology that's available, that's more energy efficient, there's rebates. Now you get a brand new warranty. There's lots of financing, plans, just like there are on automobiles. I mean, the manufacturers have some great incentives and utilities and all that. So I would say for sure, and GOG might have a different, answer, but the other time is, there's always the big question, repair or replace. So when something does break, hey, we can fix it. And we have some tools that we can grade the equipment, but really it comes down to how old is the equipment, and let's say it was 12 years old. And so usually anytime you're past 10 years and you're looking at a repair, what's the amount of the repair, and what's the life expectancy of the product? So this is where we would look at a product and say, what's the life expectancy? Well, it's 15 to 20. And we kind of have 3 levels. If it's a poor installation and it hasn't had a lot of maintenance, it's probably got a 15-year life expectancy. So if we're in the 12th year, you might only be able to expect 3 more years of a reliable, service out of that. So what are we looking at for a repair? If it was, it's whatever it is, that's what you have to determine. Now that same furnace might be, okay, same repair, it's 12 years old, but boy, there's records on there. They get it cleaned and tuned every year. Looking at it, it's a good install. The airflow those are things that generally the technician checks when he goes out, even if he's repairing something. I'll check the gas pressure. I'll check what's called the temp rise and see if the furnace is running hot or cool. But let's say hey, this is a good install and it's had good maintenance. You can expect 20 years. Well, that's another 8 years. You may choose to repair it because it's in good condition and should have had longer life. But that gets back to life expectancy.
I know we're back to the rebates.
Yep. Yeah, rebates.
Are the rebates available to homeowners, to businesses, to churches, to schools? Are they maybe?
Yeah, most of the rebates that are out there and the heavier rebates are residential. There are some available out there for commercial, but they're not generally as or churches lucrative as they are for residential. Yep. Yes.
I don't know if it's a question for you or for Todd, but of all the new homes that are being built now here in New Ulm, what are people going for right now?
Well, so the question is, with all the new homes being built, do you want me to answer that, Steve?
Oh, come on.
Yeah, go ahead and start.
Okay. So I'll just speak for the general new construction market, and then I'll let Steve GOG. And again, the question is, what are we seeing in new construction and what's going in those homes? So I'll start out with what we see in new construction. The products that are selected for that home, it's determined by the builder, not the homeowner, okay? Unless you're building a custom home and the builder is asking you and getting you involved with your local contractor so you can make the choice, that's fine. But we are heavily involved in the new construction market in the Twin Cities, I'll say, and a lot of national builders and thousands of homes going up. Almost 100% of those have the lowest entry-level products, a single-stage furnace and a single-stage air conditioner, sized for 20 below and sized for a hot day. The lowest cost products, the entry-tier products is what we see. And it's what you get with the home. There's more option.
That for 20 years.
It's forever, and yeah, we
15, whatever you just said.
yeah. Yeah.
know?
So that's there's way more options that are offered to people looking for these new homes on the countertops and on the faucets and on the doorknobs that you want, because you see those. We wish there was more options that actually have a payback, because, you know, we say, you move into that house, every month you're gonna have two bills, a mortgage and a utility bill. Okay, so people go out and the home that they can afford is what their monthly payment's gonna be. What can you afford? Oh, here's the mortgage. And there's no comparison on what the utility bill in this new house. And you know what? If you had a much lower utility bill, you might be able to afford a higher mortgage and a better house, if you will, or a nicer house. Or maybe you could afford the granite countertops if you put in an air source heat pump. That's gonna save you a lot of money and lower your utility bill. So if the granite countertops are gonna raise your mortgage $20 a month, and the utility bill is gonna reduce your utility $50 a month, you're ahead $30 a month. But you don't, generally, people don't get those options on selecting the heating and cooling equipment. So, Steve, anything to add?
Yeah, that's right on. We don't do a lot of work for Builders Direct.
Yeah.
But we're doing 3 houses for Owners Direct this summer, and it's all the top end equipment. So owners, when they have the choice,
Yeah.
they do go top end.
Oh, well, this might not be a fair question, but there was just an article in the Journal about all this new apartment that's being built. Do you have any idea?
Depends
Is
on
there
who's,
a way to influence them to pick something energy efficient that would use less energy? Because that's, I mean, it's gonna help the person that's living there, but what I guess I'm thinking about is the greater good.
apartments and condos actually usually go a little higher end.
Oh, really?
It's not
Yeah.
usually the bottom. And
The
it's-
question had to do with apartments, and we call them multifamily in our industry. We're seeing on that new construction, I would say that's probably an area where we are seeing improvement and higher efficient, and heat pumps to be specific. And I mean, one of our largest markets for putting in heat pumps in multifamily is Fargo, North Dakota. Cold climate, and been doing that for a number of years, and enough of them have been out there that, wow, these are proven. And we're starting to see that in the Twin Cities now, too.
Why do you think that is?
Well, some of it has to do when they really look at some of the overall installed costs. There are some advantages in the multifamily on being less than maybe a conventional. So, yeah. Yes?
I don't know if this term exists, but like, if you think of somebody who's a green builder,
Yep.
is this their choice, kind of? Would they choose this? Would they, you know, you're saying it's always the builder or contractor that's really making the decision about what's put in rather than the buyer, kind of?
Yeah.
If you're a green builder, is this what you choose?
Great question. The comment is, you know, what about a builder that would install, say, a dual fuel system, one that has a gas furnace and a heat pump, on being a green builder and trying to do that? And you're exactly right. It is some of the trainings we've been trying to do with some builders, because one of the games, if you call it, with builders is differentiate. How do I differentiate my multifamily, you know, 2,500 square foot home from somebody down the road? And just simply make that air conditioner a heat pump. It's pretty much the same. There are some builder incentives for them. It's a little bit more complicated. There's some money that they can have available to them. But there's some easier ways for them by just adding a little bit more insulation or making some minor changes. Or they could do a heat pump. But we feel there are opportunities for builders to differentiate themselves in the marketplace by marketing their home as a signage, whatever. This home includes a hybrid heat system. This home has an air source heat pump. And that's, to me, could be a differentiator. So,
Gosh, it's been fabulous. Oh my God, my head has been.
yeah, okay,
We're getting to 8 o'clock.
Very
so
good.
My gosh, my head,
very good.
my head is full. My head is full.
Thank you,
so
thank you.
much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank everybody for listening. Thank you so much.